Welcome to RSA 2023. This talk is titled Exposure Management, the Rise of Proactive Cybersecurity Platforms. Introducing speaker Nico Pop, Chief Product Officer from Tenable.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you, thank you. That is way too much. Thank you for being here. How was lunch? Good? You're awake? You're still awake? I needed my caffeine jolt. Okay, good. All right, we're going to talk about, I hope, something different. We're going to talk about proactive security. And, my alternate title is The Last Platform of Cybersecurity. So we'll talk about platform as well. By the way, there's no microphone issues, right? It's the French accent, so just telling you in advance. Oh, here's the clicker. All right, that's any lawyer in the room? No, that's the slide that says, I'm going to tell the truth, all the truth. If I lie, not my fault. Okay, you've been warned. All right, 2023, you're in cyber. It is the year of platform. Who went to the show floor, talk to all the vendors? Raise your hand if you did. I got to shake you up, guys, to wake up. Okay, good. I'm going to guess. What was the first words? We have a platform, correct? Right? Everyone wants to be a platform in cybersecurity. And why is that? That is the banker view of the cybersecurity market. You see that, all these logos? It's probably less than the logos downstairs. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. That market is ripe, right? It's fragmented, it's ripe for consolidation. You can visually see it, right? No argument. There's another reason why it's going to go fast. I promise you a lot of these companies won't be here next year. Right? There is a recession. In the times of recession, people gravitate towards consolidation. So fragmentation, recession. Anybody from Gartner in the room? Sure? Okay, I don't really like Gartner, but when they agree with me, I quote Gartner, right? And they're saying, look, what is Gartner saying? No, I like them, they're good guys. 75%, right? 3/4 of all organizations are actually looking at consolidating, right? Because consolidation comes with cost reduction, simplification, all these good things. All right, it's happening already. I'm going to prove that to you. I'm going to show you the platform that you probably were pitched, right? They exist. SASE or SSE, heard of it? Raise your hand if you heard about that, right? Good. Basically, it's network security consolidating in the cloud. That is reactive security, by the way. You see what I did? I put reactive security on the right, proactive security on the left, and then on the x-axis I have access-centric, right? Secure access service edge. That's to protect access. XDR, heard of XDR? The SIEM, the SOC? All right, of course you did, right? So that's the other, EDR, NDR becomes XDR. That's another consolidation. Now, that one is threat-centric and obviously reactive. We're looking, have we been breached? Let's look for IOCs and react to that, and let's go hunting. The only one, by the way, that is actually proactive is identity, right? Zero trust. Let's harden our user. Let's give them two-factor authentication. Let's reduce access because, we get killed by over-access. Do you notice something? There's nothing that is proactive and threat-centric. So like the chemist Mendeleev, right? I think he did like the organic table and say, there's a hole here, so these things exist. I'm doing the same thing. There's a hole here. These things exist. And we're going to call it exposure management. All right? You heard it from Nico for the first time. So when it's really famous and Gartner rename it, you remember you heard it from Nico, 2023 at RSA. Okay, so what is it? The idea of exposure management is to consolidate, to unify. Consolidate if you're a business guy, unify if you're a product guy, preventive security across the entire attack surface. What is he talking about? All right, a little picture. Preventive security starts with vulnerability management, says the Tenable guy. Of course. What else? So I'm going to go on the left a little bit. What do I have? I have cloud. What do I do in the cloud? CSPM misconfiguration, that's vulnerability. And by the way, I'm also looking for vulnerabilities in workload container. That's VM, extended VM. That's VM for the cloud. Keep going left, AppSec, right? Vulnerability in open source library in my supply chain, SCA. Vulnerability into my web application, DAST. That's exposure management. SAST, SCA. Vulnerability in my own code, right? That's on the left. Let me go on the right. Identity vulnerability, If you look at ransomware, it's always because people can escalate privilege due to Active Directory misconfiguration. Well, if you have AD, you probably have Azure AD. If you have Azure AD, if you don't have Azure AD, you have Okta. You may have all of the above, right? The directories, if they get misconfigured, if they are vulnerable, everything falls. Keep going right. IDaaS, right? Identities as a service as a SaaS. What about Salesforce, Workday, all these SaaS applications? They have authorization. They have something called RBAC. Authorization exists in there. That's zero trust. That's permission. They can be abused. They can be forgotten. They can be abused. Keep going right. TPRM, right? And then OT. I could have put OT somewhere else. But if you think about it, right, as an organization, very simply put, you probably have an AppSec team. You have a cloud security team. You have a VM team. You may have an OT team. They're pretty much doing the same thing. Think about it. Okay, so attack surface and 3 kinds of vulnerabilities. Exposures, security weaknesses, misconfiguration, software vuln, access vuln. That's it. That's the triad. All the same across the attack surface. Yet, a bunch of logos. By the way, why do we care? Why do we really have to do all that stuff across the attack surface, right? Do we really have to do all that work? Can we just do one? No. Do you recognize these things? Top of the news. All taking advantage of a specific vulnerability in a specific part of the attack surface. I'll pick some of my favorite one, right? SolarWinds. Somebody injects a library code, a binary, into the SolarWinds software. They create a nice bomb, they sign it, the stuff is inside. Okay? That's AppSec. Capital One, that's the big reference for cloud security. That one is interesting. It was a triple play, right? That lady got in because there was a vulnerability in the WAF, that's web application scanning. But it was not the only problem. The WAF was configured with too much access, so she could have access token to the S3 bucket. That's the second problem. The third problem is the S3 buckets let egress traffic go. 3 problems. That's cloud security. Make a breach. Hillel Yaffe, you probably don't know that one. That's a hospital in Israel. I know about that one because a good friend of mine works there. For a month, they had ransomware attack. It got shut down for a month. They had to use paper and pen. Pregnant women would come to the hospital and they would tell them, we can't deliver the baby here. You got to drive for 30 minutes. I mean, seriously, that's not a joke, right? And that's Active Directory. Okay, which one do I have? The lapsus, remember, Okta, remember that one. Oh, Colonial Pipeline, right? Misconfigure VPN. It was actually interesting. It was the IT stuff that was compromised that led to the compromise to DOT. So you get the point, right? Breaches follow weaknesses. Do you remember the weakest link, that stupid show, right? That's what we're living. That's what we're doing. We're in the weakest link. One of these things is the weakest link. You can't ignore it. You have to do exposure management across the attack surface. Keep going, Nico. All right, breach everywhere. Okay, so platform, right? As I said at the beginning, the most abused term in cybersecurity. Everybody has a platform. Where does it start? The first idea is, you got all these scanners, AppSec scanner, you have VM scanner, you have CSPM scanner, you have OT scanner. Let's bring all these scanners. We need all these scanners, right, to get the full visibility of the asset and the findings, right? Let's get unified visibility in all our exposure, okay? That's the first aspect. We want to consolidate all these sensors. What do we do with that? Well, there's data coming out. There's asset and finding. So really, as a platform, it's a data platform, right? There's a bunch of stuff, a bunch of assets and bunch of finding that are going to go into that platform. Wait a second. You're saying cyber security data platform? Rings a bell? A data lake? I heard of that before. Yeah, but that's not that. That's not XDR. See, that's the subtle difference, right? XDR is about bringing the activities, right? The SIEM, all the logs, all the activities, right? That's reactive. I want to see what's happening. This is about bringing what you have, your state, your assets, and their exposure, the security findings together. You see what I mean? It's state versus activity. It's right versus left. Now, what's strange, they are somewhat similar, right? You ingest a lot of data, right? In both cases. You correlate, they correlate, we'll talk about that contextualization, that's the stuff word. And then you prioritize, and then you have to remediate, right? The SOAR, here it's like more ticket management, all these things. But it's very similar. In fact, all right, you want a buzzword? This is about shifting left your XDR, becoming proactive. And you'll see the relation, we'll develop that. Okay, so that's not XDR, it's something different, it's another data lake. All right. Second word, most abused in cybersecurity after platform management. So let's talk about what management means. Okay, if I do all that, if I get all these sensors, if I deploy all these scanners, what's my biggest problem? Time. Because I'm finding a bunch of findings, a bunch of vulnerabilities, right? And I can't fix them all. So that platform needs to tell me what really matters. So prioritization is the name of the game. Tell me what I need to fix, because I can't fix everything. It's that obvious. Across the entire attack surface. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 ways to prioritize. All right, the first one is for the practitioner. We as practitioners, what do we care about? Critical and high. Fix your critical and high. So, you heard of risk-based VM? Take that principle. Right? Let's rescore the finding. Let's rescore the asset. Let me explain how it works, by the way. You're going to be expert in 2 minutes. Take a vulnerability. Is the vulnerability really a powerful vulnerability? Like, I can do remote code execution, high exploitability, right? That's part of the risk. The second, are the bad guys using it? Is the Chinese net army using it? Are the Russian using it? Are the organized crime using it? Right? Is it actually used in the real world to breach people? Put these 2 things together, that's the risk of the security finding. What about the asset? Right? Because you have a high vulnerability on an asset that doesn't matter. I don't care about the risk. But, if it's my customer database, my ERP system, right? The 2 together, that's really risky. So think about multiplication. My ERP system with Log4j, that's a high risk. Right? Okay, we did that for Vault. Repeat that for CSPM. Repeat that for open source library. Whole AppSec for OT. Rescore every asset, every security findings. The misconfigs, the software vault, the access vault. Even identity, right? User, group, rescore them based on the security findings. Rescore everything. With that, you get critical high. What's interesting, you get critical high everywhere, and then you can normalize and say, okay, should I take care of my critical high in cloud or in Active Directory or in my open source library, my supply chain? Helps you make decision, right, to steer the ship across the attack surface. That's for the guys who do work. Let's talk about the boss. We all want to be the boss, right, one day. So the boss doesn't think in terms of asset, right, risk. He thinks about, actually, asset, but bigger asset, right? He thinks about in terms of what is the risk that I may have in my cloud? What is the risk, if I buy a company, I just bought a company, what is the cyber risk that I introduce into my organization? So it's more like business risk than it is asset risk. So it's an elevated view. And I want to know, how do I compare to the other people? How do I train? Am I reaching my SLA? So it's really business risk management. That's another form of risk. But if you have all the data, by the way, for all the assets, you can group them and you can do that as well. That's the power of the data platform. That's the second prioritization. The third one is even different. It's about threat risk. You see, if you really scan your attack surface, you find this vulnerability, you can do something really interesting. You can take an attack framework like the Matter attack framework, and basically it talks about TPTs, right, that are always linked to a specific vulnerability, right? For example, I can do lateral movement based on RDP, right? For example, I can do privilege escalation because I can basically raise my privilege by cracking token in memory, right? An LSAS attack. So the question is, with all this data, you can actually map all the TPs in an environment. Then you prioritize them as vulnerability. How do you prioritize them? Okay, that TPT, we find it often in your environment, and it also leads to a very critical asset. Remember, we scored the asset before. Okay, now I can prioritize the TTPs, which means I can now find the attack path and I can prioritize the path. Think of a path as a vulnerability. Now, what's interesting, it gives you a different insight, because on that path, there may not be any critical vuln. There might be medium vuln. There might be a medium configuration. But all together, right, that is a very critical vulnerability. So they are new insight. They're new way, different way to prioritize. That's the third method. Okay. Benefits. Okay, I put my marketing hat here for a second. If you talk to the boss again, right, the pitch is actually simple. Vendor consolidation is always about less complexity, give me a better price. Why? Because volume pricing, right? Heard of Microsoft E3, E5? It's the playbook. We give you all that stuff, you pay less because you're buying more from one entity. It's the same idea. Every platform is like that. SASE is like that. XDR is like that. In a way, there's a little bit of commoditization of the sensors here, right? Because we're lowering the price by combining all the sensors together. So that's really economic value, right? That's pure economic value. There's complexity, right? Because a lot of people try to do this integration by hand. So there's definitely complexity. Hard to put a ROI on this. But here's the second interesting quote from Gartner. We're security guys. It's not just about money. I know if you went to the Mandiant talk, and I didn't see it, but I heard it before, nation states are investing a lot of money, right, like China, to break us. We better raise our game. We had better raise our game. So really, the end game is not just more cost-effective, simpler cyber. It's about better cyber. Can we actually change the game in cyber by adopting a platform approach? Can we? Let's see. We forgot something. What's the most important thing in life? Relationship, says the Frenchman. You still awake? She's awake. Good. So we forgot that there are relationships among the data. I'm going to explain. This is a picture of proactive security today. Sounds familiar? Silo. I promise you. Talk to the VM guy. They'll talk to you about laptop, databases, switches, servers. That's all they talk about. Talk to the cloud guy, container, S3 buckets, Kubernetes, blah, 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 workload. The AD guy, identity group, blah, blah, blah. He's laughing. OT, host human interface, PLCs. Silo, silo, silo. We're looking. And by the way, we, the vendor, did a great job to balkanize security. So everybody thinks in silo. What's the problem? The world is connected. Anybody from Palo Alto? I'm going to give you my favorite example. Is there anybody from Palo Alto network? That's okay. All right. Imagine you'd say, I'm going to buy 20 million of all the cloud security, right? Prisma Cloud from Palo Alto. 20 million. And I have AWS, Azure, Google, GCP. Everything is secure, right? I spent 20 million. I lock down my cloud, right? I'm secure. Oops. You forgot about Bob. Who the hell is Bob? Bob is an SRE. Bob is a developer. Bob is using his daughter's computer, or his computer laptop at home, and he has an unpatched critical vulnerability. I'm going to phish Bob, spear phishing. I'll find him on LinkedIn. I compromise his laptop. I steal his credential. I got full access to your production cloud. Everything is connected. The one who know it's connected are these guys, and they take advantage of it. We work in silo. They don't. They work horizontally. So we got to stop, and we got to start breaking the silo. That's really the big idea beyond exposure management. I'm going to give you an example. All right, this is the state-of-the-art vulnerability management today. I find host asset, I identify software, and then in that case, that software has a critical vulnerability like Log4j that enables remote exploitation. That's VM today. That's the data model. Let's bring external attack surface management, right? Like there was a lot of buzz about external surface management. What's really interesting is the relationship. If you can tell me that scan from the outside can actually link to the device I'm scanning from the inside, they may have different IP address, private, public. But if you can establish that relationship, you know what it does to me? I'm not going home. I'm fixing that vulnerability because that thing is sitting on the internet with a critical vulnerability. I'm dead man walking. See the power of that relationship? Let's keep going. All right, that same software, that vulnerability is actually running also in my public cloud. Okay, that thing, according to ASM, it's not on the public cloud. There's other way to do that. I look at the CSPM stuff, no big misconfiguration. I'm okay, right? I'm safe on that one. Public cloud, okay. Remember Bob? Let's bring Bob back. All right, Bob comes, right? It's a small company, it's both the SRE, the sysadmin. So he's got access to all these servers, right? Public cloud and private cloud. Oh my God, if Bob falls, we're screwed, right? Okay, so let's scan Bob Active Directory profile for misconfiguration. We're safe. Bob is good. Oops. Nope. Again, that home computer with a critical vuln. Without this relationship, I would have no clue. If I did VM alone, if I did Active Directory alone or Classic alone, I have no clue. The relationship matter. If you remember one thing from that talk, he said relationship matter. Go hug your coworker working on something else. Okay. How are we going to call it? Because these things are truth, right? I mean, the problem with the risk scoring is like, yeah, your risk score is that better than the other guys, right? But here, it's unambiguous. I can show you that server is sitting on the internet and he has log4j. Fix it, right? So should we call it truth-based prioritization? Probably not. Still awake? Still with me? Good. No. Actually, people call it context-based prioritization. I think it's a better term, but still hard to understand, right? That context-based thing. Okay, whatever we're going to call it. The important lesson, right? And you heard that before. You cannot protect, right, what you don't know, what you do not manage. It's basically about software and access, if I want to be really simplifying identity and software. So the first principle is know your software, right? Know your software. And by the way, you scan all your software across your own code, open source library, the cloud, right? Your private cloud. You should know your software. It should be there. So that platform, right, that data lake should give you all that software information. I'm going to try to give you a small demo to show you that even software inventory is security if you have that data. 1 minute, I need the magic glasses. Okay, so imagine, right, that I have that data lake, and I can ask a very simple question, like how to run the video. Okay, it's a little bit slow. So imagine that, okay, simple question. Can you tell me, and I'm going to simplify the query because it might not be over, how many versions of Chrome do I have in my environment? Sounds like a simple question, right? If I accelerate, you'll see that, and by the way, that's tenable, so can you see the bottom? 36 rows. So that's not a security thing, but it is. If I have 36 versions of Chrome in my environment, I promise you, that is a big exposure. So you see how the value of really understanding your software, starting with your software, how it really transcends the way you do security. I'll keep going, right? And people will tell you, increasingly security is becoming a data game. Let me give you another example. Do you remember December 13th? Raise your hand if you remember December 13, 2021. It's Log4j. It's when Log4j struck the world. Imagine if I have that platform, right, that data lake, I can ask a question such as, I know my software. Can you tell me where I have, as installed software, Log4j? Across my public cloud, my private cloud, my entire environment. Where is it? 5-second query versus how long did it take you to scan your environment? So you basically instant gratification. And then now, by the way, I know where Log4j is in my environment. I can say, hey, show me the critical asset, the top 10% asset that have Log4j, right? And so on and so forth. So you see the insight, the security insight that just the knowledge of software can provide by bringing all the asset information. All right. Give you another example. Back to the Future. That was in case the video doesn't work. So know your software, number one. Second, know your identity, know your user. The other exposure is identity. So back to the relationship, right? I'm going to show you an interesting query. I'm going to go straight to I'm struggling a little bit with the video, so I'm going to show you the query. Basically, we ask the data lake a very simple question. Can you show me, right, people that have high privilege, they are high-risk users, sysadmin, that have a device with basically a critical vulnerability. People that are sysadmin attainable with a critical vuln on one of their devices. We had 5. Interesting. No VM tool can give that. So the value of the relationship, when you start making VM or cloud security identity aware and identity, software vulnerability aware, it is a game changer. Now you have insight you never had in terms of how you clearly, we prioritize fixing these things. We do not need any risk score, right? These truths are really driving new insight that drive what you're going to do in return to reduce your exposure. Okay, by the way, nobody can write these queries beside Nico and a couple of people, so they're almost like signature, right? The security guy should know the question you should ask in your environment, and you can package this question. So we can make it really reachable to a lot of people, right? The security guys, the people who understand the exposure, should package this query. You should not have to search. You should have to, all you have to do is find. That should be a mentality that we should have in that industry. Okay, let's bring it home. The magic triangle. Thank you. Triangle of love. Software, identity, and in the middle, the device. What we lose track of is it's that connectivity, right, that creates the issue. You know how we talk about zero trust? I'm going to throw one. I'm going to talk about connected trust. This is really what we need. Because I'm going to use a software vulnerability to land on a device. On that device, I'm going to find credentials or tokens from people. And then I can steal that identity, which in turn allow me to access another device where I can maybe escalate privilege or be in another network where I can leverage another vulnerability. So it is this transitivity, if you want, of the exposure that kills us. So we need to understand it. There is a graph. So we need to know our asset, but we need to know that graph. That graph is really pure gold when it comes to cyber. That's what will change our game. All right, so we talk about software, right? Understanding our software because that's vulnerability, understanding our identities because that's vulnerability, and then linking them together. What do you think? Do you think like if we actually don't have software or missing some software, it could be a problem? Take a guess. Yes. Here's an example. Security control. That's the other thing that's interesting. This is also the type of data this proactive security platform will ingest. If I'm missing EDR on a very important server, that gap is a risk. If I have a sysadmin that doesn't have MFA, that is a risk. If I have an executive at home, which is not behind a SWG, right? That gap is a mega risk. That's a vulnerability. So you probably never thought of it, but gap in your security control are also vulnerabilities. They're exposure. They should go to the data lake. Visual. Remember my crazy graph? Okay, if I put CrowdStrike, okay, we're better positioned against Bob, quite frankly. So I have it, I'm good. I have it in the cloud as well. Oops, that critical server on the internet with Log4j, that's a gap. I should install my EDR right away. So it's also security control. Where do I have them? Where am I missing them? I'm going to give you another example. I think that's important. That's an important use case. So who has ServiceNow? ServiceNow, one, that's ServiceNow. Okay, good. You know all your assets, right? All right. So actually, let's take Tenable. All right. We're scanning with Tenable. And you say, Well, you claim you're not scanning everything with Tenable. That's the blue. Let's bring McAfee or Trellix. You're not putting Trellix everywhere. Let's bring CrowdStrike. Okay, what do I see here? You see the problem? I think I've got the laser. Oh, yeah. Okay, you see that area? That area? I'm not scanning, out of compliance. I don't have any endpoint protection, out of compliance and security. It's a problem, right? So that steers you to where you have the biggest gap. That might be your biggest vulnerability, by the way. You spend all that money on these security vendors, and you forgot to deploy them. The other interesting point, which is kind of a side effect, not intentional, if I bring all that data together, I know more than ServiceNow. Right? You heard that, the wisdom of CRUD. If you can take all the data from all the things, all the scanner, all the security control that see devices, you get a better picture of all your devices. It's called cyber asset management. You see the assets, you find the findings, they're all prioritized. The last thing that we need are the tickets to fix this thing, but that's for the next presentation. Okay, so you get a federated CMDB, non-intentional side effect. But remember, inventory is security. Remember my Chrome? So there might be security value there. Let's go back to the graph. The graph is really powerful. You know that exposure graph I mentioned? I'm going to give you another example. Okay, here's my user. That's Glenn, Tenable CTO, by the way. It's a little bit of revenge time. Here's the software stuff. And you notice there's a full graph behind it. That's the full SBOM, I will explain. And there's a device, Glenn as a home device. Okay, I'm going to give you some use cases to show you how it's going to make security better, right? That exposure graph, the relationship, all the assets, all the findings and their relationship all together. In that case, we have a full SBOM. What does it mean? We know that the software installed, that application, right, uses all this library. That's the first level. But these library themselves use open source library, which themselves use open source projects. So it's an end-level BOM. If I know about all the elements of that graph, I can detect SolarWinds. I would find a library. I don't know where it's coming from. I have no reputation for that binary. That's the value of the full BOM. All your software assets. And by the way, the other thing is you can see that your vendor is using an open source library that makes you vulnerable. Today, it's hidden from you. Okay? All right, that one is kind of hard to understand, but the other one, remember Bob and Palo Alto? That's the one. See, Glenn here, the CTO has access to GitHub or source code. He has access to Salesforce or customer data, and he has access to AWS production because he's the CTO. He's a very powerful man, right? So you get phished, problem happen. Now SecOps, let's talk about SecOps because that's reactive security, that's the XDR. I want to show you that example, it's important. Left brain SecOps. Imagine it's 1 a.m., you're in the SOC, 1 a.m., and then all of a sudden you're seeing a device beaconing. Right? Or you know there's a device at that IP address, it's beaconing, it's talking to some, command and control center, that's not good. How bad is it? First question, is that system vulnerable? Right? Because if it's vulnerable, maybe it is a real compromise. Second question, do I have Windows Defender? I have Windows Defender. Okay, third question, how is it configured? Oh, it's not configured in high intensity mode, meaning, or it's not even blocking, meaning I'm not really protected. Okay, that's a problem. Okay, fourth question, who owns that device? Because that device is about to fall. It's Glenn. And, okay, what is that Glenn guy? What's his title? What can he do? Oh my God, GitHub, Salesforce, AWS production. You see, the power of that graph tell me right away, I need to go hunting that incident. Interesting concept. So after all that exposure is context for reactive security as well. Never thought of that. Because again, everything is connected. Asset have activities and logs. Asset gets scanned. We find their exposure. We map them to TPT. I promise you, the day you see a series of incidents that are following the attack path, you know you're being breached. So, the left side of the brain, but is the brain of XDR. So after all, maybe there's a graph of graph. Maybe these two things come together. Maybe there'll be only one data lake at some point. Okay. Anyway, it's a data lake. Nobody wants to get locked with one vendor. So it's going to be a platform, better be open. Should be open standard, should be supporting all the vendors, right? I think that's a mandatory requirement. I'm not really good at that, but that should be a requirement. Time to wrap up. How are we doing on time? We're good. 10 minutes for questions. That's awesome. Conclusion. As is not about cost. It's not about flexibility. It's not about just simplification. It's about changing the game in cyber. You saw how that knowledge, that context, the knowledge of the asset, the knowledge of all the findings, the knowledge of all the relationship across the attack surface is a game changer to do better security. It's about making us smarter, better than the attacker. It's about raising our game in cybersecurity. So here it is. The last platform, we fill up the map. The bingo card is full. I don't know, by the way, how we're going to call it. You know, if you guys have cool ideas for the naming, I think exposure management is a little bit. Anybody from Tenable Marketing here? Yes, I won't say anything. It's exposure management as a platform. Okay, last slide. This is what you need to do. Go back home and look how many sensors you're doing. Are you doing AppSec? Are you doing cloud security? Are you doing VM? Are you doing OT? That's number one. Do an inventory. Number two, see where you have redundancy. How many teams, how many, I promise you, they all scan, they all prioritize, they all remediate. 3, 4, 5 times. So build the pitch for consolidation. And then last but not least, when you're ready and you convince people for that consolidation, go find the tools out there to do that. Be the early adopter of exposure management and raise your game. Raise the game of your team. Thank you.